So this piece is probably the first one I ever heard of the three guitar players, John McLaughlin, Paco de Lucia, and Aldi Meola. I heard it when I was 15 in a guitar summer camp, and made a pretty big impression on me. To this day, I still enjoy it as one of my favorite guitar pieces to listen to. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I think it's a good, at least it inspired me to look at the idea of fusing different elements together: classical guitar, nylon string, acoustic guitar, flamenco guitar, which is the same instrument, but a very different musical style, and jazz, of course. And I think that was the original idea of the guitar trio, was jazz, classical, and flamenco, the three acoustic styles. And this piece makes an interesting point about how something like that could actually come together. Now, obviously, it has a lot of technical things to it: speed, fast scales, and technique. I'm going to do my best to kind of break down the piece in understandable terms, I think, for anybody who might be interested to try to play it, or just to maybe learn a little bit about what's going on musically with it, because we have elements of flamenco coming from Paco de Lucia, and we have jazz, obviously, and obviously it's unique to the three-player styles. So we're going to look at kind of each one of those elements individually. Let me first talk about the structure of the tune, go through the chord progression. And it's got a lot of chords, so that's definitely probably the more jazz concept of this piece is the idea of the chart is pretty involved. And this is John McLaughlin's composition, but we'll see a couple little bits here and there that are ideas of Paco de Lucia specifically. And I'll talk about each of those with the fast scales and the lines as we go along. But for now, let's just look at the chord progression of the whole tune. Okay. First of all, let me talk about also the rhythm of the piece, because we're doing the chords. If you want to look at it like we're just going to do the accompaniment part, the rhythm guitar part, it has 2 meters going on. The first half of it is in 3/4, and the other half is in 4/4 to the ending, and it repeats in the middle, so it goes back to the 3/4. I've seen transcriptions of this, or at least one transcription in 6/8 meter, and that's, for me, that's a legitimate way to think about it. It definitely sounds like it could be a 6/8. We don't have a drummer to kind of make it more clear and obvious, but for me it makes more sense if we think about 3/4. 3/4 being kind of like a waltz: 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and we keep our foot on the dotted half note: 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. So you kind of think of it in 1, and it's 3 beats like a waltz. And a lot of the chords are moving, in that pattern. And the strumming that we do on guitar might sound more like a 6/8 against it. 6/8 would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you want to feel it that way, it actually works out just fine. It's just that we tend to feel what's called a dotted quarter there instead of the dotted half. And so the reason I think 3/4 is a better way to think of it, three beats per bar rather than the 2 in triplets, 1 and a 2 and a, is simply because of the meter change that happens in the middle. Goes to 4/4, and we can just keep the quarter note straight all the way through. So if we use a metronome just with a click on the quarter note, you can just use it through the whole piece. I'm going to use a metronome also later to show how I feel, the phrases against the time, and I'm going to use it actually accenting either in 3/4 or 4/4. My metronome has a little extra sound to differentiate the two, and I think that'll be helpful in understanding both where the meter change is happening and why I think 3/4 is a better way to think of this than 6/8. Anyway, so let's go through the chord progression of the 3/4 part. It starts off like this. We have an E major chord up in the 7th position. Then we have what I call an E11th, which is really like a D chord, but we have the E note in the bass, and we also have a B natural up on top, so that makes it in what they call an E11, the 11th note being this is me. So E11 or D over E if you want. Then we have the C major 7th Again, we're just keeping this bar position going, which I think makes it easier to play. Just hold the bar down. Then back to the E11, okay? And that happens on each measure, but we changed to the E11 chord early, okay, in the compás, in the rhythm. So in other words, we don't land it right on the downbeat, we land it before the downbeat. And that's important for the syncopation of the phrasing that's going on. So if I tap my foot, I just tap my foot on the 1. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But we strum like this. Right? And I do a little rapeo here, which is thumb up, ring down, index down. Right? Okay. 1 and 2 and 3 and then 1 you can leave empty. It's hard for me to leave things empty. I like to keep the feel going, so maybe something subtle there. Maybe a light downstroke on the 1 so we keep ourselves grounded. But at least we got the foot going on the 1. Okay. Now that pattern just happens once, but then we do the same kind of progression in the second position, or in B. In other words, so we transpose from E to B. And harmonically, what's happening, you can hear it's kind of like E, C, D, E, an E minor kind of, or E Aeolian kind of progression, except that our tonic resolves to major. We hear that a lot in some pop music kind of ideas. So it's not really jazz or flamenco necessarily, but we got to keep the rhythm real clear when we're doing this. So I say of anything flamenco, that's the important thing, is the compás, the rhythmical feeling is always being expressed. Okay, so that's the beginning phrase, and we'll look at the fast run, that crazy fast run that goes over top of this later. So next, what happens after our second A, or B11, sorry. So that was B, B11, G major 7 now. So kind of transposed from the E Aeolian sound to the B Aeolian sound. And that's important for the melody that goes fast over top, which we'll talk about later. Alright, so from here, we're going to change kind of the modality again, and the chords are going to be A minor, or A minor 7, and B major. Okay? And that change is kind of calling in that more Spanish sound, the Phrygian sound, so you're getting more of a flamenco flavor with this part. Okay? And then we do that again, except we're going to throw in an extra passing chord. We throw in the C natural major chord, resolving to the beat. Now, again, like I said, 3, 4, 6, 8, depending on how you're feeling it, that passing chord comes in a specific way, again, where we kind of lead the downbeat. So we have this 1, 2, 3. So we change the chord before beat 1, in other words. Okay, and these will be both like off beats in the compás. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3. Okay? So again, let me play through it just so you can see how that connects. Okay, now the next part is what we call in jazz type music is 2-5-1. So we have A minor and then the D. We're going to play it like this with the F sharp and the bass. Now I have my source for learning this piece, just my ear, slowing the recording down a little bit, and I did have one video that is it's a partial video. It's half of the song only, and obviously the camera angle changes, so I can't get 100% what everybody's doing. But I will say I notice in this part, Al Di Meola's fretting. He might be playing an A minor 7 kind of like this instead of like this. And again, Paco de Lucia tends to do bar chords like that. But just to get you the basic idea of the structure, I'm using the basic open chords here. Right? I think Al Di Meola lands on this voicing And that's important because the next chord is actually going to be like in G7 but with the F bass note. And he literally just reaches down like this, which I thought was interesting. What I would prefer to do from here, and maybe Paco de Lucia does this, is something like we do in Taranta Flamenco, is a G7th with the F and the bass like this. I think that's a lot smoother. Alright, so after the G7, we change key. So we have the same kind of movement here, the B, A minor to B, Phrygian sounding chord progression, but we transpose it now to G Phrygian. So we have the F minor and the G major, and then again we have the F minor, A flat, and G. Now some of the chords sound a little bright to me on the recording. It's hard to hear who's playing exactly which voicing. I'm pretty sure Paco de Lucia is down there doing these golpe hits. But of course you can play these chords up in the higher position, get a brighter sound if you want. And I think I noticed in one brief scene Al Di Meola was up pretty high on the neck when he was doing some of these chords. But it's up to you. Again, this is just a chordal bass or chart that you can decide how you want to finger all the voicings later. So we have A minor. Okay, now we have the 2-5-1. Before it was A minor, D, G, and now we're doing 2-5-1 in what's E flat. So F minor, B flat 7, E flat major. I'm just playing a triad here. And what happens in the recording the first time through the pattern, there's a melody that we'll look at later that climbs up the neck, and then they do a rajeo here. Both Al Di Meola and Paco are doing this rajeo with the pick. You do down and up fast with the pick, and Paco might do abanico kind of technique, okay. So let me play just up to there in rhythm more or less, so you get the flow for the chords. So from here. When John McLaughlin does the second pass of the tune, it repeats, and he improvises over all of this chord progression. There's a chord inserted here after the E flat break before the next section, and that's an F minor 7. It's just kind of, they don't stop on the E flat, in other words, they play it through. Right? And then we get to the next section. The next section is really nice, and it was one that stood out to me when I first heard the tune, because I heard Paco de Lucia doing these rolling arpeggios, which, to be honest with you, even now it's really pretty quick. I'm going to use the metronome later, and we'll look at the specific parts and the scales, and we'll kind of figure out what our limitations are. But anyway, let me show you the second time they do it. Paco doesn't do these fast arpeggios. He just kind of goes up and down on the chord. So based on the video, I saw this particular passage fingered this way. So this is a B flat major in first inversion, and I'm doing an arpeggio on the 6th, 4th, 3rd, and 2nd. And then a C minor 7, and in the same position as 8th fret. Then the same pattern goes to the key of G, actually. So we have a G chord inverted. This would be B, G, and D, triad, and the A minor 7. And then it goes to another position here. This would be E major, right? And we kind of stop right there, and it goes to a different place. But just one more time, that progression. Again, it's in 3/4, 1, 2, and 3, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 1. And the up and down arpeggio I hear Paco doing very fast on the recording is this kind of thing. Up and down. P-I-M-A-M-I. So. Okay. One more time. Oh, wow, I was in the wrong fret. Sorry about that. Okay. And just so you know the harmonic concept here, B flat coming from the E flat chord. It's actually the way I think of it is this is the tonic chord and then this is the minor 2 chord in the scale. So it goes B flat to C minor, G major to A minor, and then E major. And the important thing about this inverted chord shape is that we have this descending bass line that goes D, C, B natural, A, G sharp. And that's important because when we hear the melody later, that's basically all he's playing is the bass line, you know, up high. So anyway, the next chord is the only one that I'm not 100% sure of in the whole piece. In the video I saw, it was at an angle kind of like this, and he plays this, right? And it sounds pretty crazy sounding chord on the recording too. So I'm not sure. This is how I'm fingering it. I'm just putting a bar at the first fret, and I'm fingering an E note on the second, and a C sharp here. And as far as I can tell what this chord is, like if you don't have the bar, you have this, which is a B flat minor 7 flat 5 chord. Pretty normal chord in jazz, but it's this F naturals that kind of make everything sound crazy. If I think about the chord with the F natural in there, and I have this E note as the out one, then I have what's basically the 4 chord in the harmonic minor scale. So anyway, it's kind of a wacky sounding chord. And then the next chord is going to be just a good old B flat major 7. Okay? The next chord is going to be a D7 sharp 9, good old Jimi Hendrix chord. But we also have the sharp 5 up on top. And that's important because we hear that when they do this chord hit. And then go to G minor. Good old G minor. Regular triad. Now, the important thing about this chord is the timing. This is the first time where we're not emphasizing necessarily just the downbeat or kind of leading the downbeat like we were in the first part. We're going to put this chord on beat 2. So we're going to leave a rest on beat 1. Hit this chord on beat 2 and let it ring. 1, 2, 3, 1. Okay? And that's important for the phrase here. And you listen to it. It's a very jazzy hit kind of thing that comes at you from left field to kind of bring in the key change to G minor. Alright? So, it's a lot of chords so far. Anyway, starting on the G minor, we're back into normal strumming in 3 waltz style, however you want to do it. And they put a definite emphasis on the downbeat this time on this section, so they're doing 1, 2, 3. This next chord is like a, you can think of it as an augmented, but not 100% sure of the fingering of it. Maybe just the minor chord with the major 7th. Probably heard that a lot. Then the regular minor 7, and then we have A7 with the flat 9, flamenco style, and then D minor 7, and then this is a pretty crazy chord. It's essentially a B flat dominant with the 13th top. Okay, and then instead of having the 5th sounding in it, we have the low E string, which is actually the sharp 11th. So in flamenco, it's not that wacky. We do this chord quite often in flamenco to resolve to the Phrygian mode or key center. It's just in this case, we're hearing it in the low E, which is pretty wicked sounding. Okay, so it's got a very bizarre kind of sound to it. Anyway, and then we have this resolution, C, B flat, A, which is very flamenco. And we're going to actually, once we get to the A chord, we are going to shift meters. And so I'm going to stop here and just kind of play through the whole song chord progression up to this point so you can get a better picture of what happened up until now. Alright, so back to the beginning and all the way through. stop here because right when I get to the A chord is the meter change, and then we have kind of a totally different concept for the improvisation section that happens next. Alright, so the meter change goes to 4, and so if I tap my foot to the half note with the dot, what I do for the 4 sections, I tap my foot now to the half note, just the regular old half note. So my foot tap has to change necessarily. If you're using a metronome, it just goes tick, tick, tick. You don't have to change. It just keeps going right through because we keep the same tempo. But for sure, we need this meter change. Now, I've seen this section of chords kind of written different ways. I've actually seen a 6/8 carry through, which is not really right. But mathematically, it looks like it makes sense because this progression that I'm going to show you right now of chords, or more like, let's call it a vamp. It's not really a chord progression. This vamp has an interesting structure that I think it's 6 measures long. So because it's 6 measures in 4/4, it can kind of have that ambiguity coming from a 3/4 that it might still be in 3. But I can assure you that I've seen Paco use the same vamp in a rumba, which is a very 4/4 type of rhythm. And for sure, what comes up after the improv section is a very clear 4/4 meter kind of thing. So I just call this whole section 4/4. Makes it simple. All right. So, and I said rumba or tangos. Both ways can be thought of as a way to express this particular rhythm. I'm not sure how maybe John McLaughlin or Aldi Miller are thinking about it, but for sure Paco de Lucia is thinking of it like a kind of a very fast tango or a slower rumba feel. Okay, so rumba, if you don't already know what that feels like, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You have to have the accent 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, right? So you have to have those 2 accents in there, in the and before 3 and then 4 in order for it to feel like rumba. Tangos is a little different. It'd be 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Both of those feels will actually work for this. But I think rumba makes more sense just because it's a very quick tempo. Okay, we're going to use the metronome later to look at what's a good speed to practice this or learn it and then, work towards. So anyway, rumba would be like... This whole section is in pretty much in A Phrygian, like vamping. And then it modulates more or less, it modulates to D minor for the next section. But keeps that rhythm going. Alright, so this is the interesting thing about the vamp itself. The chords stop and there's little breaks. And the breaks are real important. I believe this is McLaughlin's idea coming from the Indian background he has, where he's doing kind of like a countdown of odd meters. In the end, the math all works out to be in 4/4. And it feels very syncopated. But if you use this basic mathematic idea of kind of counting down, you won't get lost, I think, in the phrasing of the chord moves. Okay, so we have A as the downbeat of the 4/4. Okay, so starting here, the breaks in between. I think of the first phrase, the silence that we have there, as like a 9-beat phrase. Now 9s, we think of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Subdivision, I'm talking about the subdivision 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, not necessarily like beats. How many beats you're counting. Just the subdivision is 9. So the way we do a 9 rhythm, there's a lot of different ways, but the way I think they're thinking about it is something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So the last 7, 8, 9 is actually 3. So we'll do like 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Okay? So in the beginning when there's silence, we kind of imagine that we're hearing that rhythm going on. So like in other words, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, dun, dun, dun. Okay, then we do the next group of chords. And it's just a B flat to a C. Now you can keep the A and the E open for more of a modal sound, which I believe is how McLaughlin is fingering it. I think Paco plays up here in the higher position. But we're going to keep it like this. Okay, for now. So after the C, we have 7 now instead of 9. So that's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay? So with 7, we have more like a three note accent. 1, 2, 3, and da. Right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's going in between those two. Then we do this: C, B flat, C. And again, we have the breakdown. Now this time is 5. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. That's how we're going to do the 5. And then we have, B flat to A. Okay. Then we just have 3. So we went from 9 to 5. 9 to 7 to 5, and then we have 3. 1, 2, 3, and repeats the pattern. So let me show you one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, and repeat. Okay. So the structure of that, which is really a 6-bar phrase, is going to be repeat. The first 2 times they do it kind of silent like that, so they're just kind of thinking in their head of that phrase. Or you can use your foot in 4/4 time once you get the groove. It's easier to get the groove, I think, when you learn how to just kind of strum dry rhythm, apagado, like this, in between the chordal hits, because you get more locked into a groove and you can keep your foot on the beat more clearly. But anyway, the first 2 times happen with the silent space, and the next 2 times happen with the dry strumming in between. Okay, so I'll show you the whole structure here real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. Eventually, when you get the foot tap going like this, you can just relate the whole progression to the foot. Okay, so what happens there on the 4th time, instead of finishing the pattern after the, I guess that's the 7s, or the 5, let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so it's after the 5 subdivision. That's when we start the next sequence of chords, okay, and it's basically 2 on each, or 2 rumba compasses for each chord. It's going to be the A flat 9 chord, D minor 7, C7, and then the B7, the sharp 11. Okay, there's different ways you can figure that chord, but anyway, I like this way, very flamenco style. The C7 and the B flat 7 with the sharp 11, just 1 measure each, and then back to the A. Okay, and that repeats. So I think of it as starting on A. It makes more sense. So starting here comes in a very fast lick that we'll look at, that is done in unison with Paco de Lucia and Al Di Meola, and it actually, the phrasing of it is directly from a piece by Paco de Lucia called Solo Quiero Caminar. So you can think of this as a tango's falseta. It's pretty much what it is. It's not exactly the same, and the notes aren't the same either. So it's like, by phrasing I mean the rhythmical concept behind it is very similar, or identical almost, but we're going to do different notes. So obviously McLaughlin, as the composer, took this idea of Paco's and applied his own note sequence to it, and it turns out to be a very interesting pattern of notes in terms of the scales that we use. It mixes a lot of different accidentals, and it just sounds really cool rhythmically, you know, with the driving rumba beat. But harmonically, nothing's happening. It's just the A chord. That's it. And I believe because Paco and Al are playing it as unison, McLaughlin's role is just to play the A chord with the flat 9 in it. That's it. Okay, so for that whole section, it's just, I don't know how many bars it is, probably like 8 bars or something even. Now I'm doing literal rumba strum. If you play with a pick, it's going to have to be something like, right? Which doesn't sound as cool, but it works if you're a pick player. Anyway, and then that's the end of the 4/4 part in the first half of this song, and it goes back to 3/4 right away, but it actually has a bridge section, which I call the classical section, and then it goes back to the top. Let me show you the classical section now, and then when it goes back to the top, we'll stop there, and then we'll look at the individual guitar parts. Because after that, it's all about the fast scales and the melodies going on that make the song what it is. All right, so this bridge section, I call it the classical section. It goes back to 3/4, and we have this kind of pattern. 1 and a 2 and 3 and like that. 1. So it changes keys each pass. So it's a D minor, the walking bass line, down to the B bass, but it's an E chord. Okay, and again, it has a kind of a 6/8 sound to it, even though I want to continue the 3/4 concept. So we keep our quarter note straight through. You got to keep track of your downbeat. Again, the foot has to change now coming out of the other section. Okay, once you get here, we go back to strumming. So it's easy, gets easier again after that. So one more time. That's the E chord, then we go to A minor. Idea, we go down to the G and the F sharp, but I'm doing a B 7th bar chord. Right? So I'm doing like this 1, 2, 3, and then we have E minor, and then the bass line has to go up because we don't have any strings left. Right? Let's use the open strings here. Right, and then we have the F sharp dominant 7, and then here instead of a bass note I just strum the whole chord and let that be like a dotted quarter right there, and then I do a rajeo to the B minor 7 to resolve it. One more time. So it goes back to the waltzy jazz kind of sound, and this part is really nice because it's after a lot of energy and fast notes, it kind of gets quiet here for a brief moment before we go back to the top. And this section is, for me, is great with the chords because I actually got a clear shot of the video of what Paco was doing for the chords here. So let's go through those. We got B minor 7, 2 bars. C major 7, and Paco plays it actually like this. I like to finger it this way. C major 7. Now you remember that odd chord hit we had before? We're gonna do that same rhythm but with a different chord. Okay, we got our B7 dominant with the sharp 11. Okay, same as this chord really. but it's just the way we're fingering it up here. So you have the two E's, right? And then A minor with an add 9. And Paco's fingering it this way. For me, it's just as comfortable to do this. Okay, so it's just these open strings. I'm just fretting those two. You know, it's really up to you. Then we have that same offbeat attack, but it's a C13. This is a C9, and the 13th is up here, so we got to reach with our pinky and do a half bar on this guy. That's kind of a stretch. Then we have good old F major with the sharp 11, major 7, sharp 11. Alright, and we do that for 2 compasses. And then we take the F major, just a regular triad, way up here with the low E ringing. And as you can tell, this is kind of pulling us back to the E territory, you know, that we started the piece from. And in fact, that's what happens next. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, back to this. And that goes back to the top. So let me play this whole bridge section in rhythm so you get the idea of the flow. So that's pretty much the whole song, harmonically speaking. Now the very ending, they have, which comes after the repeat of that entire form up until the bridge. In other words, it stops on the A chord rhythm, or the tangos falsetta is basically the end of it. Then we have a bunch of fast scale trade-offs and stuff like that. And harmonically, there's not really a lot going on that's interesting. There's a couple little chords that I'll show you that are more like just little answers to the fast scale, but it's mostly about these fast runs that we'll look at in detail. And then at the end, it's just like a chord that's held, and it ends on an A chord, the whole tune. So, but we'll look at that after we examine the individual parts of what each guitarist is doing. But that'll get you started with the structure of the tune. Now I'd like to play two of the parts, McLaughlin's part and Paco's part, or Paco's part first rather. We'll do that first. At a quicker tempo with the metronome so you hear better the flow and something closer to the ballpark of the real tune. The real tune is up there between 170, 175, and it fluctuates a little bit, but it stays pretty clippy. And the video I saw, they had the strings tuned down a half step, which I thought was strange, but it could very well be they did that on purpose, and they're in the habit of speeding up the recording a little bit. I'm not sure. But anyway, I was able to play along with it at 175 or whatever they're doing, but it's tough. So let's try 160. Again, it's pretty quick, but it gives you a better idea how it flows with the metronome. And I'll do those two guitar parts, the Paco's part and McLaughlin part. I'll do the 3/4 part first, and then I'll look at the ending in 4/4. But also, I want to, for sake of time, we're just going to start from the bridge, and then because that's where it cycles back around, and then we'll stop at the 4/4 part. Okay. This is Paco's part first. Alright, and then McLaughlin's part. Couple hairy spots there, but you get the general idea. Alright, so I'm going to change the metronome back to 4/4. I'll just do that chord progression once, and then I'll do the fast run, and I'll stop there up to the bridge, and then I'll just do the fast run again, and go all the way to the end. So in other words, we're not going to go back to the 3/4 part all over again. We already covered all that stuff. So just a little bit on the rhythm part and then the ending.